What is causing the thyroid inflammation? Once we figure what that is, it's amazing how the body responds. That's a good tool to start using to figure out what those dietary triggers are so that you can lessen that immune response and lessen that inflammation. I have even had experiences with clients, they're able to decrease their dose or even completely come off of their thyroid medication.
Rachael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that you have me on here.
We're going to be talking about Hashimoto's, hypothyroid, sluggish thyroid. It's all too common for someone to have the story that they're struggling and suffering with symptoms for years before they ever connected back to the thyroid, either through their own research or going back to their doctor over and over, and then finally exploring that as a possibility. So I think this will be an important episode to give people more information and, most importantly, to help them get to resolution faster. What are some of the early signs that someone with a sluggish thyroid might be experiencing? And if these things continue on for long enough, that could potentially turn into hypothyroid or Hashimoto's situation. And especially the things that people deal with that take them a long time, or their doctors a long time, to connect back to the thyroid as being part of the issue.
Yeah, so probably some of the first or most common symptoms are just some fatigue. A lot of us deal with fatigue, so it's not really a big symptom that people really dive into. And a lot of us will chalk that up to, oh, well, I work a lot, or, I have kids, or I have jobs, whatever. But fatigue is probably one of the biggest ones, alongside some weight gain. And then hair loss is another big one for those with low thyroid symptoms. They just start losing their hair and they're not quite sure why. So those are probably some of the most common ones. There's a few others that are like cold hands and feet, dry skin, dry hair, brain fog are some of the other really common ones that go right along with those other few.
How often do people confuse low thyroid function and just write it off as, oh, I'm getting older?
Oh, I think so many. With my own story, I was 29 and started having these symptoms. And so I was kind of told, well, you're getting older. That's normal. You're busy, those types of things. So of course, brushing that off to, like I said, chalking it off to your situation and lifestyle.
Yeah. So what are people thinking to themselves as they're going through this? These symptoms are continuing, potentially getting worse. They've already made some health efforts like changing the diet or some other healthy lifestyle changes. And then, like in your case, being told at age 29, well, you're getting older. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Give me a break. Like 29 is a young age. And to write off these more severe symptoms as blaming it on aging is just, to me, it's just crazy. So do people start to experience this where they're going along and they're like, can this really be due to aging or whatever other reason it's being blamed on that just doesn't add up? And then where do they go from there?
Yeah. So I hear this so often that they'll go to their, doctor and be like, okay, I'm reporting all these symptoms. I'm gaining weight. I'm losing my hair, all these things. And a lot of times they get dismissed. And even if their doctor might run, say maybe they'll check a TSH level to see and it looks normal. So then they're leaving, they kind of went in there hopeful that maybe something is going on, or maybe they have a family history of some low thyroid. So like, it's got to be that, but their TSH comes back normal. So a lot of them come back, we're leaving feeling hopeless, like, oh crap, well, I thought that was what was going on, but it's not. Maybe it's in my head, or maybe it's just me worrying about, things are off, and maybe it's just more of my lifestyle. When in reality, our body will start to tell us when things are off long before it'll even show on blood work. And some even say up to years of, before you'll even see that on your blood work.
So does it have to get to this point to where things are really bad and there's blood test numbers that are just off the charts or out of the range? And if someone's listening to this and says to themselves, yeah, I've got some of these symptoms going on, but maybe they're hearing the same things you pointed out, that maybe their doctor's telling them, don't worry about it, or it's old age, or your labs are within the normal range. Is there anything they can do proactively before it gets to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, your body best. So if you start feeling symptoms that are not normal for you, dig into that. And one big thing I like to recognize or tell people about is that your blood work is not looking at the optimal. These are standard labs. So most people who are going in and getting their blood work done, they're not feeling well. So standard lab ranges are pretty broad because it's the average of everyone who's going to get their blood work, which again, it's mostly people who aren't feeling well. So we really want to go get your blood work done, but have it looked at from an optimal perspective, which unfortunately most doctors aren't. They're looking at from, that standard lab. And so even if your lab is normal, you could be right on the cusp of falling out of that lab range, but it's still normal. Where if we look at it from an optimal perspective, we can start to pick up some of those points where your body is struggling. And if we can see those points where your body's struggling, then we can start to support your body in those areas. And you'll see remarkable differences in how you feel. Because again, your body knows best, and you know your body best. So you know when something is wrong.
So, how do you look at this with people if they come to you in the earlier or middle stages with these complaints, and also with the confusion about what's going on because nobody's been able to help them with it yet? You said if you're able to start to address some of those things they're dealing with, they can start to feel better. Do you have some examples of that?
Yeah. So a good example is just looking at TSH. So TSH is thyroid-stimulating hormone. So most doctors will look at that, especially if you're having those, telltale signs of low thyroid, the weight gain, the fatigue, the hair loss, the whole cold hands and feet. They'll check TSH. So we were talking about broad lab ranges. So they can range from 0.4 to 4.5, or I've even seen 0.5 to 5, where optimal lab ranges are 0.5 to 2.5. So as you can see, that's a huge difference when you're looking at, so your doctor, you might have a 4.5 TSH and your doctor looks at it, oh, it looks normal, where I could look at that and be like, okay, hey, you're at 4.5. You should be closer to 2.5. No wonder you're feeling so tired. And again, TSH isn't the end all be all. We want to actually run a full thyroid panel to assess what's going on with the thyroid, because it's our pituitary that releases TSH, and then our thyroid releases T4 and T3. So we actually want to look at a full thyroid panel to actually know at what really is going on. Because if we're just looking at TSH, we don't know what actually the thyroid is doing. And so that's just one part. Blood work is so extensive, but just looking at a full thyroid panel is also just a great place to start so that you can really assess fully what the thyroid is doing, especially if someone's coming to me and having all of those symptoms. It's like, okay, if only TSH has been checked, we need to look at your T4, your T3, and also your thyroid antibodies, which if your thyroid antibodies are checked and those are elevated, then we can rule in that Hashimoto's diagnosis, which is that autoimmune part of the thyroid issues.
And is that the difference? If the antibodies are there, then it's autoimmune Hashimoto's. And if they're not, then you may still have similar symptoms, but it's a hypothyroid situation.
Yeah. So you can have there's two antibodies that they'll typically check. So your thyroid peroxidase antibodies or your thyroglobulin. If one or both are elevated, that's considered Hashimoto's. However, there is a small portion of people who can have negative antibodies but still have Hashimoto's, but that's usually diagnosed by an ultrasound. So they might have some more dense tissue there, but they're having all those symptoms too. It's a very small portion, but that can happen. So just keep that in mind if that's you. But about 90% of low thyroid, hypothyroid clients or patients have Hashimoto's or is caused by Hashimoto's. So it's a good thing to check if you have low thyroid, but you don't know you have Hashimoto's.
I did not realize it was so high. So if you have low thyroid but don't have the antibodies, that's only about 10% of people?
Yep.
Okay. Are the treatments different? Or say the wellness program interventions? Are they different or are they similar?
So in conventional medicine, if you have low thyroid, treatment is typically thyroid hormone replacement, which the, guideline is recommending levothyroxine, which most people have heard of that one. Levothyroxine or Synthroid is the brand name. So that's like the guideline gold standard treatment for low thyroid. So if you go to your doctor and you do have antibodies checked and they're elevated, that doesn't change how your doctor treats your low thyroid because antibodies don't tell them anything. This is what conventional medicine, where if you look more into functional medicine, holistic, the antibodies are absolutely so important because that's telling us there's an autoimmune process going on. So you could even go on thyroid medication because we need our thyroid hormone. Like we can't live without thyroid hormone. So if you do have an imbalance in those thyroid hormones, that medication is important to balance out those thyroid hormones. But oftentimes people will report that they still have the same symptoms, even if their thyroid hormones are optimized. And it's because it's that autoimmune part that's not being addressed because that's the real problem. is the autoimmune or the immune system has gone haywire and it's attacking the thyroid. So if we don't address the immune system, that attack continues to go on, leaving, that person dealing with all those symptoms still.
Is it useful to look at it by separating the two, where one, there's low thyroid, that's an issue. It needs to be supported in some way. And two, there's a potential autoimmune reaction. The immune system is overreactive, hypersensitive, and it needs to be supported in some additional way.
Yeah. I mean, of course, a lot of my clients that I get come to me, a lot of them are on thyroid medication. And that's okay because I do believe that conventional medicine and functional medicine modalities can complement each other. So you can be on thyroid medication, but also address that immune system. Because if we can start looking at what is triggering that immune system and lessen that exposure, lessen those triggers, support our body in the foods we're eating, the things we're putting on our body, those types of things, it only helps to optimize our thyroid health, but also help calm that inflammation inside our body. So it really can complement each other. I don't necessarily look at them separately, but I really do think they can complement each other when you're trying to optimize your health and optimize your thyroid function.
With the immune support, what are some of the things people find the most benefit or relief with?
Yeah. So, of course, a lot of times nutrition is so important. It really is because there's can be things that you're eating that are triggering an immune response. So, understanding what those are for you can be so important. Now, a lot of people will go onto like an autoimmune protocol diet, which can be helpful because this is a diet you're going to follow that cuts out the most inflammatory foods for everybody. But it's not a forever diet. So it's a tool that you can cut out those foods and then over time you reintroduce them to see what those triggers are for you. So that's a good tool to start using to figure out what those dietary triggers are so that you can lessen that immune response and lessen that inflammation. And some lifestyle habits that are super important is, stress management. We are living in this world where we're go, go, go. We never take time for ourselves. We're just in this chronic state of stress. And so starting to slow that down and let our bodies feel that, be bored, so that our body can get back into that rest and digest state really helps lessen that cortisol and that inflammation.
I think these are important things that you're pointing out. Number one is this distinction of the immune system or the lifestyle factors that you've mentioned, because this would explain why someone could be on thyroid medication, maybe even making adjustments with their doctor, yet still not feeling well. So if that isn't solving it, or if you're listening and you've already tried that, then these are other parts of the equation you could look at that could help you feel better. When it comes to diet, do you like to start your clients on AIP, or what do you find is the best place for people to start that sets them up the most for success? Because these diet changes can be a little overwhelming depending on how much a person has worked with their diet in the past. So a lot of times people are looking at cutting out all processed food. And in the case of AIP, there's even a lot of whole foods that get cut out, which could be fine, healthy foods, but maybe not tolerated by someone with an overactive immune system, at least at the start.
Yeah, definitely. And AIP can be pretty overwhelming. But with my clients, I really meet them where they're at because some have already done all that and they come to me, really wanting to dig deeper into those root causes. Where some, I would say, if you have high antibodies and you're struggling with symptoms, the best thing you can do to start with is cut out gluten and dairy. Those have been some of probably the top two inflammatory foods for those with Hashimoto's. So if AIP seems too stressful, start with gluten and dairy. And then you can start to look at other possible triggers if you're still struggling with symptoms. But those are the two that I've seen reduce antibodies so fast if you're having all those symptoms that just you can't kind of get a hold of. And that's what I would recommend. Yeah, just starting out.
Okay. Yeah. Some low hanging fruit to begin with. If someone needs to go even further than that, what's the best way to approach it? Because I think there's people that do want to go further, even if it is overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming to feel poorly too. So what would some pointers be that could set someone up for more success if they do need to take the diet changes further?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing that's really great right now is, 20 years ago, gluten-free diets, and you just really didn't hear about it very often. But there's so many great options here. But I also think mindset plays a big part in this because when you're going into a mindset of, oh, I have to cut out all of these things, then it makes it a little bit harder where you can start looking at it from, oh, what are the things that I can add in that's going to help optimize my health, help optimize my thyroid, and really just looking at whole foods in general. Because even if you just, cut out gluten, but then you replace it with a bunch of gluten-free processed foods, those still can have some of those added chemicals and inflammatory oils and things like that. And so luckily now there's a lot of there's a lot of meal plans out there that can really help guide it. I have a program also that takes you through that process of cutting foods out, how you reintroduce them. It makes it very simple and laid out with meal plans and recipes, just because I went through that process and it was overwhelming and hard. And so I wanted to create a program just for that. But there's a lot out there. Pinterest is a huge one that I use all the time for different recipes and guides like that. So there's so much out there nowadays to really take that stress away from it, because there is so many people nowadays that just can't handle gluten. It's too inflammatory for them. And same with dairy.
So, say someone cuts those two out and then needs to go a little further. What are the next most common offenders or things that someone would cut out?
Yeah. So some of the most common are the sugars, processed sugars, and then inflammatory oils. So like your peanut oil, your soybean oil, the oils that are just in everything that's processed, unfortunately, because we're getting so much of it. They say it's safe in small amounts, but when it's in almost every single thing that we're eating, it becomes inflammatory for us. So those would probably be the next two. And then the third one would be alcohol, because alcohol overburdens our liver, but then also some of them can have gluten in them too. And so that can also be a trigger that you might not really think about, it containing gluten and causing those reactions as well.
How long would someone cut these things out to get a good idea whether it's helping them or not?
Yeah. So I always recommend starting with 30 days. Start with 30 days, see how you're feeling. Some want to go longer, but I always say don't go longer than 90 days because it can be pretty restrictive. And then start reintroducing those foods. And I like to mention one thing with gluten is that if you do have Hashimoto's, you have Hashimoto's, it's good to go gluten-free forever. I'm just going to put that out there. The reason being is gluten is inflammatory to the gut, but not only that, with Hashimoto's specifically, gluten has a protein in it called gliadin. And gliadin looks very similar to thyroid tissue. So they call it molecular mimicry. So when you're eating gluten, not only is it causing digestive inflammation, it can also cause that molecular mimicry, but it gets into your body and your body starts tagging that gluten and then also tagging your thyroid tissue to be damaged. So it can actually ramp up that thyroid tissue damage and cause more symptoms and more inflammation in your body. So for those of us with Hashimoto's, most everybody, at least, or everyone that I have come across with, have cut out gluten and felt so much better off of gluten.
Yeah, that's huge. If that's a big driver for somebody, will many people see a difference in that 30-day timeline after cutting it out?
Yes, typically. You can't, everyone's so different. So I say 30 to 90 days is kind of a good place to start. Now, with gluten, of course, forever. Now, they have shown, or research has suggested, that gluten can cause an immune reaction up to 6 months. So I have had some people where they're like, I've cut it out for 30 days, 60 days, and I don't notice a difference. I always say give it time, because you could be one of those people who are still in that flare that's taking time to calm down. So give it 6 months. But of course, gluten, I recommend to cut out forever if you do have Hashimoto's, especially if you're having a really hard time managing it at all.
That's an important tidbit because I think a lot of people try cutting it out, but they may not go for that full 6 months. And then to your point earlier, it's just so easy to ingest it, especially if you eat out at all or processed foods, because it's just everywhere. So hopefully that gives some hope to anyone out there who's tried cutting out gluten and is frustrated that they're not getting the results they see other people get, that sometimes it could be a timeline thing, or a little bit can accidentally get in somehow, and it can persist for a while till things die down.
Yeah.
For the foods they are going to be adding back in, what's your approach to reintroduction in terms of which foods first, and then how long between reintroducing foods to watch for reactions or changes?
So, of course, with dairy, so I've had some clients who can't tolerate, dairy at all. So they'll reintroduce it. They might have a flare up of symptoms, but then I have others who tolerate it just fine. And so, of course, there are better options for dairy versus, maybe some that aren't so great. So, of course, grass-fed dairy, organic if you can get it, because some of those can have added hormones and things like that that could cause some of those reactions. However, I think dairy is a good one to reintroduce, but the reintroduction process is, since it's a sensitivity, you want to have it for a couple times a day and then wait for 3 days to see if you notice any symptoms, because it can take up to 72 hours for you to have notice any symptoms, since it's called a delayed reaction, where anaphylaxis or an allergy, that's immediate, where a sensitivity is going to be more of a delayed reaction. And so you can start to reintroduce that, have it a couple times that day, and then wait 3 days to see if you notice any symptoms. So having like a food symptom journal is really important as you start to reintroduce this process. And then if you have it and you don't notice any issues, then you can move on to the next food, whatever that might be. And I always let my clients decide what they want to reintroduce, because there's some foods you might miss more than others. But dairy is typically one of those top ones that people miss the most, is that cheese and, milk and things like that. So that's usually where we start.
Cheese is definitely a tough one to let go of.
Yeah.
What are some of the common signs and symptoms that people are looking for as they reintroduce foods? And have you ever seen a case where someone's reintroducing, they feel fine, no changes noticed, and then maybe they get some follow-up lab work, get the results back, and notice that their antibodies shot up, even though they're not having any noticeable symptoms during the reintroduction?
If you're doing the food reintroduction, some of the most common symptoms could be like joint pain, like an increase in joint pain, increase in fatigue, headache, um, bloating, digestive issues that weren't normally there. And everyone's a little bit different, and so I always say the symptoms that were normal for you that have kind of gotten better when you cut out those foods, if it should be those typical symptoms that would ramp up if you do have a typical reaction in most cases.
Okay, makes sense. With dairy, is there a specific order you go in with the reintroduction, like starting with butter, then yogurt, then sour cream, then cheese, for example? Or is it based off whatever people feel like starting with?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. It just really, I leave it up to them, and we kind of make a plan for them to decide what they want to go with first. It's usually cheese, though. We'll just we'll just start there. But yeah, typically cheese first. But yeah, I always leave it up to them.
And for the person listening to this who's saying to themselves, I've already made lifestyle changes, maybe they've done a lot of the nutrition, like, for example, cutting out gluten and dairy, and they don't feel that much different. And they're sitting back looking at the rest of the world saying, what's going on? Like, there's all these success stories from people just cutting out gluten and dairy. A lot of people who say they did it for 30 days and feel like a new person. But for them, in their case, they are trying all these things and just don't feel like anything's really moving the needle. What do you recommend for somebody who's in that situation?
Yeah, so I relate with this a lot because that was kind of my story. So I did do some changes, and I saw enough changes in my how I felt to really, love that, like dig in more into functional medicine. But I did feel like I hit a plateau. I was like, okay, I'm missing something. I'm not sure what it is, but I need to figure out why I still feel like I'm kind of hitting a wall. And that's where I got learning more into the root causes of Hashimoto's, why we get what we do, because I mean autoimmunity is rampant nowadays. And when I was younger, you know, 39 years ago, it was like you just didn't hear about it very often. There was a person here and there, but now it's exponentially risen. And so it's like, why is this happening to all of us? And what I learned was that we have environmental chemicals, diet and lifestyle things, and you feel like you're missing something, can be that next key to figuring out maybe there's something deeper that you've been exposed to that's continuing that damage to the thyroid.
So you said environmental toxins. What are some of the other common ones?
Yep, heavy metals are common, mold toxicity. There's some parasites also that have been linked with Hashimoto's as well that have caused thyroid nodules and things like that. So really digging into some of those, and it's different for everyone. It could be a few of them, but then some might just have one or two of those things. So really helping the body with that overburden. It's not always just one thing. I feel like it's an overburdened body that can't keep things, can't get things out like it should, with autoimmunity and chronic inflammation.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. What is some of the common advice out there that people are told they need to do or should do. Things that are repeated so often, they're pretty much assumed to be true for low thyroid, but that in your experience aren't actually helpful or aren't necessary.
Probably the biggest thing is what drives me nuts is just, hey, this one supplement's going to fix everything. You just need this, and that drives me crazy because I've had clients come to me that bring me, all of these supplements and they're like, I'm taking all of these and I don't feel any different. And so I really believe in, doing testing because we all are bio individual. We could all have the same symptoms. We could all have low thyroid, but we could all have different triggers. We could all have different needs. And so doing that testing is so, so important so that we know what your individual needs are and we can really cater to see, okay, what supplements do you actually need and which are just, kind of, you're just wasting your money on.
That goes back to this mentality that you're searching for the one thing or an overfocus on symptoms. I look at symptoms now as just the body talking to you, saying, hey, something's not right, as opposed to I have the symptom. So there's this one thing I have to go chase and kill. Because you're right, people can suffer from the same symptom and have different causes behind it or different solutions that are going to lead them out of it.
I love that because that's so true.
Okay. So this supplement graveyard that I think all of us have experienced at one time or another, especially if you've had ongoing health issues. I want to touch on some of the thyroid supplements and even medication options that people might come across. Can you give a brief overview of a T4 versus a T4 with T3 versus a desiccated thyroid? It's going to have everything in there.
Yeah. So, like I said, the top or gold standard recommended is levothyroxine or Synthroid's the brand name. So that most often is what doctors will feel comfortable prescribing. That one is T4 only. And so what's important too, we haven't really dived into this a little bit, but running that full thyroid panel. And if you're on T4, you really want to look at that full thyroid panel to see if you're actually converting T4 to T3 because T3 is your active hormone. So if you're only taking T4 only, that's something really important that maybe we can dive into a little bit more. But there are some T4 and T3 medications. They're not as widely prescribed and doctors don't feel as comfortable. So sometimes you might get a little bit of pushback on them, but oftentimes doctors don't check the T3. So they usually will check TSH and T4 if you're on thyroid meds. So we don't know what T3 is doing. So you could have normal T4 levels, but your T3 could be low, and that could still contribute to symptoms as well, which there's going to be things you can do to support that conversion process as well. But there are some people who may just struggle with that, activating that T4 hormone, so they might need a little bit of that T3. So, and it's hard because some of those T4, T3 combinations, they're set. They can't adjust them unless you go to a compounding pharmacy to get, the specific numbers, which that can be expensive for some too, because they have to pay out of pocket and all that. So those ones you have to be careful with because if you have too much T3, then it can send them into hyperthyroid symptoms, which people don't like, where they're sweating, they're having heart palpitations, those types of things. They just are very uncomfortable symptoms. So you have to be careful with those T4, T3 combination medications. And then desiccated thyroid, you can get this. You get T4, T3, and then a few of the other, like you said, it's all the thyroid. So a lot of people report that they love this one. From what I have dealt with and the clients I've dealt with, they like that one the most. But I have even had experiences with clients addressing that immune system. They're able to decrease their dose or even completely come off of their thyroid medication. So,
yeah, well, that seems like an obvious winner to start with. I mean, if you could support the body and balance it and eliminate the need for supplementation or trying to manage these hormone levels, why not? I mean, managing hormone levels, we do have powerful interventions that can force changes or at least will change lab numbers. But my belief is the body knows what it's doing. It's always trying to balance and compensate. So if things are out of whack, hormones numbers are off, there's a reason. And the body's not purposefully harming itself or underproducing anything that it needs. So I think there's some adjustments that the body makes that we don't fully understand. And so, yeah, you can use a strong intervention to try and change that. But for my money, it's definitely more of the latter that you mentioned. Like, let's support the body. And as we do that, the wisdom of the body is going to play out, and it's going to balance things out exactly how it needs it. And if we just put it in a position where it can be healthy and thrive, it will do that.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that so many times. And I don't believe, they always say Hashimoto is your body's attacking or mistakenly attacking your thyroid. I don't believe that. I truly believe it's reacting appropriately to its environment. So, what is going on inside? What is causing the chronic inflammation? What is causing the thyroid inflammation? Once we figure out what that is, and we either detox or decrease our exposure to that, it's amazing how the body responds and is able to, even the thyroid's able to kick in and start producing more thyroid hormone.
As far as causes of that, I've seen you talk in your content sometimes about low thyroid being due to either a primary, secondary, or conversion issue. Can you explain what those are?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So primary thyroid hypothyroidism is a problem with thyroid. So, it could be, like I said, Hashimoto's, could be radiation. So some people who will have hyperthyroid, they'll go get radiation. And then it will kind of, damage the thyroid. It'll go into low thyroid. There is congenital too. So there are some babies born with thyroid dysfunction. So those are very, very small portions. Like I said, Hashimoto's is 90% cause of low thyroid. And so primary, that's directly associated with your thyroid issue. Now, if you have secondary thyroid, low thyroid, that is a problem with the pituitary. So it's not producing enough thyroid TSH to compensate for what your body needs, the T4 and T3. This is usually a problem. Well, it's a problem with the pituitary, but it's typically like a pituitary tumor or something like that. I don't see that very often as well. It doesn't happen. You don't see that very often. And then conversion issue. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, where T4 is actually inactive hormone. So our thyroid produces mostly T4, a tiny bit of T3, but the T4 is inactive. So it has to go throughout the rest of the body to be activated to T3. So T3 is our active hormone. This is the hormone that goes throughout the rest of our body, binds to our cells. It gives us energy. It boosts our metabolism, all those things. And so T4 goes to get activated. It's 60% in the liver gets converted from T4 to T3. And then the rest of, the peripheral tissues help with that. Our gut bacteria helps with the rest of it. And then also our kidneys. So of course, if we've got a sluggish liver, we could have issues with converting that T4 to T3. So that's often the first place I go after we check blood work. And if T3 is low, we're going to start supporting the liver, because 60% of it happens there. And of course, some of the other areas like the peripheral tissues or your kidneys, if there's a lot of inflammation or gut inflammation, if we can address those areas as well, get inflammation down, that could also improve that conversion process of T4 to T3. So they may not even need any T3 hormone. It's just we need to optimize those conversion processes.
Yeah. Another beautiful solution, supporting the body, and then there's less need for outside interventions. You mentioned the kidneys and inflammation. I mean, nowadays, pretty much everyone has inflammation. So do you automatically address the kidneys, or is that sort of a side benefit from all the other work you do and that your clients do, whether it's the diet, the mindset, the lifestyle, things like that?
Yeah, I definitely, of course, we go off symptoms. If someone's having a lot of symptoms, back pain, if they're not drinking enough, because that also could cause dehydration, which affects the kidneys. But of course, blood work, looking at a full panel that we can look at from an optimal perspective, we can see markers that will point more towards liver issues or point more towards kidney issues. And so that helps guide me as well, what we need to focus on more in that aspect.
Right. Okay. And with the blood work, you mentioned previously that conventional blood work might include TSH, maybe TSH plus T4. What do you like to see in a full thyroid panel? What other blood markers?
Yeah. So, you can ask, I recommend highly asking your doctor for a full thyroid panel, but you might have to spell it out for them, because I have even had clients come back to me and say they only ran TSH and T4 and they said they'd run a full thyroid panel. So you want to make sure that TSH and free T4, what I mean by that, there's a total T4 and a free T4. Free T4 is what is actually floating around and available for your body to use. Total is the addition of your free and what's already bound up and not usable. So we want to know what's free and available. So you want to get TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and then your TPO and your TG antibodies. That would be the ideal full antibody that is run.
What's the difference between total versus free? And what does that show you?
Yeah. So total. So a lot of times, if you run total, that can also show up low or, typically low or normal. But you could have a normal total T4, but low free T4 because you have more bound up than is free and available. So you could still be having symptoms, even if your total looks normal. You might have low free T4, so you don't have enough thyroid hormone floating around, leaving you symptomatic. So if we can understand, okay, your body is binding up more T4 than is available, there may be some things we need to do either nutritionally, like iodine makes up our T4 and T3. So if you're not getting enough iodine, then that could automatically cause you to not have enough free T4 being made and available. So there's things that we can look at, whether it's free T4 that's low or free T3 that's low, that we can help optimize and help support, boosting those levels.
Okay. Yeah. And how about reverse T3?
Yeah, so reverse T3 is one of my favorite markers. So when I talked about your, T4 has to be converted to T3 because T3 is our active hormone. Well, reverse T3 is essentially T3 but inactive. So our body has a feedback system that, when it kind of tries to keep everything in balance. And so it'll have your free T4 or your T4 levels. What it's converting to T3, when it doesn't need anymore, it starts converting it to reverse T3. So your body's always trying to keep a very delicate balance of all of your hormones to keep you happy. Well, we can start essentially getting more T3 inactivated to reverse T3 when our body is in a stressed or overburdened state. So I've even seen exponentially high reverse T3 levels because the body goes into a hibernation state because it's so overburdened with toxins that it's shutting down. And so I've had some clients come to me with that and they're dealing with all these symptoms. It's because their body's over inactivating reverse T3. So I always like to correlate that with when bears who go into hibernate for the winter, their reverse T3 goes up for the winter to get ready for hibernation. And I do have clients that come to me with elevated reverse T3. So a lot of times this tells me that we need to start detoxing and getting some of this overburdened body detoxing so that we can get some of those, toxins out.
Yeah. I can see why you'd want this included in a full panel. If you take the case of low T3, someone's given a supplement or medication that starts then dumping more T3 in the body. And if they haven't looked at this situation where potentially the body's overburdened, it's intentionally dropping T3 and going into more of a hibernation mode. I mean, talk about fighting against yourself, which is what a lot of people feel. I felt that so much, both with thyroid issues and other health issues, and it's just exhausting. So something like this would be valuable to know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, let's end with a little bit of the good news on the food side. I've heard you talk about in your content the importance of carbs, and a lot of people feel restricted or like they can't have carbs. So why is it important that people eat carbs and eat enough of them?
Oh gosh, carbs. So if we're not eating enough carbs, that can start to slow down our metabolism, which if you have low thyroid, you already have a lowered metabolism. And so you want to make sure you're eating enough. And like I mentioned, T4 to T3 conversion, our liver needs carbs to convert this conversion because carbs help fuel those enzymes that help convert that process. So of course, if you're restricting or eating very low carb for a long period of time, that can really affect that conversion process as well. So it's super important to eat those carbs, especially complex carbs. We want those ones that are going to fuel our body, but not spike our blood sugar and keep us on a blood sugar roller coaster all day.
What's your take on keto or other low fat therapeutic diets where people do get a lot of benefit, but they can also love the benefits so much that they lose track of some of the things you're talking about, the importance of carbs, the way they fuel metabolism, and their importance to thyroid health?
Yeah. So I think short term, it doesn't hurt. Like, and especially with keto, I have had a lot of clients who tried it and they did well. But long term, that is when it becomes a problem. Like I mentioned, restricting carbs too much can really affect how your body, does that conversion process. It can slow down your metabolism long term because you're just not getting the adequate nutrients from those carbs to help fuel that process, to boost your metabolism and also help with that conversion process.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to hear. as keto and other therapeutic elimination diets have become more popular. And I agree with you. There can be a time and a place for it, and people do get benefit from it. I got benefit from it, but I was ignorant to what you're talking about. So 3 years of that caused a whole other set of issues that were unnecessary. So I think it's important for people to know both sides of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Rachel, if people want to work with you or follow more of your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm most active on Instagram. So my page is Rach_Hashimoto's Wellness. So they can go follow me there. I have a couple of free guides. So especially if they're just starting out, they can grab my Hashimoto's Quick Guide, which kind of goes more into, more about the thyroid hormones and the immune system part. And so it's a great one to start with, especially if you're kind of wondering, maybe you have it, maybe you don't, but you're dealing with all of these symptoms. That's a great guide to grab. And then I also have a free Reading Your Thyroid Labs guide, so they can go in there and grab that. And that's a little bit more in depth into understanding why they should run a full thyroid panel and what it means when they get their levels back. So it can help them understand their levels, their labs even better.
Okay. We will link to that in the show notes. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.